is Hector Caudillo, and this year my position is English teacher focusing on ELA 3 and also as a GP or graduate profile coordinator, and this is my 9th year teaching.
So my name is Gabby Faria Lopez, and this year I am teaching chemistry, and I am also the other site lead here at Torres. I've been teaching chemistry for the last 6 years and have been teaching for 15 overall. I taught music before this.
Well, graduate profile is essentially a way for students to be able to showcase their learning. And they show their learning by identifying artifacts, which are just different products of work that they've produced. And they then prepare a reflection where they can explain what kind of learning happened, how they grew, how they were challenged. And then ultimately, all of that is presented at what's called the defense. Want to add something to that?
Yeah, and so the different elements are, they're a compilation. So Madera kind of came together with stakeholders, industry partners, and other administrators, teachers, alumni to develop the different elements. So there are 6 different elements, and they all kind of represent different capacities that are intended to help our graduates with their 21st century skills so that they're equipped for whatever world they inhabit after graduation.
So it's a little hard, I think, to measure exactly how much time we put into just Defense Day. We really started planning and brainstorming Defense Day. We pitched it at the start of the year, of the school year, but then I would say early, or actually December, right? Around December,
yeah.
We really started kind of thinking of what the day could look like for our students who are going to be participating in the defense. So really since then, we spent our second period work time planning, brainstorming, figuring out what it would look like for students to participate in a defense. And then closer to the actual date, it was regular work during second period, and then even some days we might stay a little bit after school to prep things, especially like the day before. We were here pretty late just getting things set up for the students.
Yeah, and I think the process, so getting ready for Defense Day was a process, kind of started off with, how do we map this? Like, what does this look like for the site itself? And then what does it look like inside of those defense rooms as well, and the people who were in them, including the students. But in terms of time, yeah, it's hard to quantify. It was definitely a good chunk of time.
And then as far as support from students and staff, we got support from both ends. So one thing that students helped us with is we needed to practice what defenses would look like in a much smaller scale. Before we did it with over 500 students, we were like, let's try this with 5. And so we were fortunate enough to get a few students that were willing to go early and allow us to practice. And they got the practice suit, but it allowed us to practice how does this work, and does our rubric make sense, and are we able to pull up student presentations easily? And so we got support from students in ways like that. And then our staff supported us a lot because they would listen to our ideas. We would brainstorm and prepare some concepts of what the day could look like, what the defenses should require, and then we would take it to different groups, especially our leadership team on campus. And they would give us feedback, input, and we could take that back to the drawing board and then back to them until we could land on somewhere that felt like something that could work.
Yeah, and additionally, we had a number of our teachers that served as lead facilitators for the day, and they stepped into that role and they kind of took on the goings-on of the defense room itself, which was amazing. And we had an incredible amount of support and guidance from our administrative team as well. All of their expertise really helped us kind of gauge who to go to and how to navigate different things, and then give us, feedback on the different kind of proposals that we had brought forth.
So I think perhaps the biggest challenge about Defense Day and really everything graduate profile is that Taurus is actually sort of the school that's leading the charge in this. In our district, something like a Defense Day had never been done. And really, even outside of our district, we asked some of our district leadership to help us find, like, are there schools that have done this that we could learn from? And only until recently were we able to connect with a school down in Anaheim. But generally speaking, it's really a kind of a new project. And so we didn't have a lot to reference. And that was, I think, one of the big challenges was we had to sort of brainstorm, develop, and think about what something like a Defense Day could be when we didn't have anything to look at as an example. I think that was one of the big challenges. And at the same time, a challenge in a good way, right? Like I like to be challenged. I like to solve things. And I enjoyed having to figure out something really from scratch.
So I think to kind of piggyback on what Hector said, it is challenging to bake something entirely from scratch and to basically foreshadow everything. There wasn't a point of reference for much, with the exception of like rubrics and things like that. But understanding how a Defense Day would line up and what the students would be doing, what the lead facilitators and the community members would be doing, and even down to the kind of the minor details of how many students would go through this at once, and how would the vibe in the room change if we change different components.
Even as little as where students should sit in the room, like all of those little details, where they should sit, how should things be laid out, where should the computer be placed, all those details we were really trying to think so things would run smoothly, but also, as you say, would create kind of an atmosphere where students felt like this was a thing to take seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And ensuring that this was then something that was meaningful and that helped them for what was to come or is to come their senior year. So those were some challenges and hurdles that I think we faced. So we had, our defense panels were pretty diverse. We had a number of community members that came out, so industry partners, business owners. We had district admin, both past and present. Our entire GP team came out, so our other site leads. And then we had, who else was on the panels?
There were also maybe not parents of students that were currently presenting, but just members of our community who have had students or have students in the district schools. We had, you mentioned like different district personnel, both current and retired. We even had like a district attorney present. And in the future, we really hope to be able to partner even more with industry leaders of different fields of work, because I think that it'll be really good for them to see our students and what we're sending them off with. And so that's something that I really like to do more of. But yeah, we had a diverse group. We even had, like you mentioned, teachers from other sites who wanted to see how Taurus is doing it so that they can build something similar to what we've started. Well, I will start by saying that I was pleasantly surprised. Once the day got started, we both had the opportunity to kind of sneak into some classrooms and see what was going on. And I was very surprised. And I was very happy to see what our students were presenting, the quality of the presentation slides, the way that they were just carrying themselves in front of the panelists, the way that they were answering questions. Like all of those were things that, I had hopes for our students, but they went even beyond, I think, what I hoped that they would do when they had their defenses. I think that students understand things like collecting artifacts. They know that in their classes, they are producing things, they are creating things, and they are able to identify those. But one of the areas that we saw students do need some work and practice in is really making strong connections between the work that they do and how that has developed their learning in any of the elements. So for example, if a student showed a picture of a group project and they might have said something like, this project helped me to collaborate. And maybe the panelists would say, well, how did it help you collaborate? And they might have said something like, Well, because I was collaborating with people, and so there wasn't like a depth to the reflection of how they were actually growing in these skills. And I think that that's an area that even as teachers we're gonna try to work to really help students learn to articulate or to explain how what learning is really happening. I think that like in their minds they probably know it. It's just hard sometimes to explain those things clearly, especially under pressure.
Yeah. No, and I would agree with that. And I think to kind of highlight, like, I was so impressed. Our kids really showed up, and in the few that we got to kind of step into, they were so impressive. I think the systems part, I think they have a pretty solid grasp on, curating things in their classrooms and not just tangible things, but experiences and understanding that they connect two elements. But I do think a point of kind of reflection is, is the metacognition at the level that we would hope for? I know that there's work to do there, and I think that that's what this whole process is about, is getting them started so that they have that time to develop that capacity before their senior year.
Yeah, I think there were really good things that we saw. One moment that just stuck with me was we walked into one class and a student was on like their second artifact, and they had just switched to it, and they had actually embedded a video into that slide. Mm-hmm. And something we learned is that when students submit those slides, if it's a Google slide, the videos, they lose permission, and so the student wasn't able to play the video. And in that moment I kind of thought, oh no, what's he gonna do? But he very naturally kind of adapted. Yeah, it's one of our elements. He adapted, and he says, well, the video's not playing right now, but what you would have seen, and then he went through and explained it and just kept going without really missing a beat. And it was moments like that really made me feel proud of our students who, under pressure and sometimes with these moments where they had a troubleshoot, they were able to do it very well. And what we heard from our panelists was overwhelmingly positive. They were very proud of what they saw. And I think all our students definitely can grow and improve by the time they're seniors, but I think we're off to a great start.
Oh, great.
Well, I think the people who participated in defense, by and large, said that they were very surprised with how well things were organized and how well they ran. So I think that on every layer, whether it was how the process of evaluating students, the process of having to retrieve their slides, what the students themselves were presenting, I think there was an overall positive response to it. We even heard a story of a panelist who said, if this student was a senior, I'd hire them for a summer job. And so again, over and over, we just kept hearing compliments towards what our students were doing in the classrooms. Every time we had a little break in between, we'd check in, hey, how's it going in your room? And it was all positive. It was a lot of positive stuff. So I think people were really impressed with what Torres students and staff pulled together. I think we set the bar for our other school sites to rise to the same level that we did. And I'm proud of our Torres students for setting up that bar, that standard. And I think they should be proud of themselves too.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think the positive, you could feel it. Like the day was just filled with that. And I think it was also neat to be able to kind of take something that had been sort of ambiguous and like, what is this going to look like, and make it real? Like, and maybe it's not exactly what it's always going to be, but like, what does it look like maybe? And I think that was kind of neat for some people to get that context. But I was super proud. I mean, what we were able to do like as a team and what the students were able to achieve, like it just was, it's incredible.
Well, I think I would tell our sophomores, once again, I'm very proud of you guys. You did an excellent job this time around. And I would say that know that we're going to continue to work to make this even better. We're going to work to make it so that you have even more clarity on what's expected of you. And if you do your part as well in continuing to prepare to be engaged in your classes so that you are engaging with the learning that's happening, that you are being reflective about the things that you're doing in your classes so that when the time comes, you can speak to what you've been doing. I think that we're on track to have an outstanding Senior Defense Day in 2 years. So I would just encourage students to do their part as we do our part to prepare ourselves for an even better Defense Day when that happens in 2025.
There's like a saying, it's like we always default to our highest level of training, and you did it, like they did it, they've done it. So yeah, I think as we continue to refine processes and systems and take the feedback and morph things, I think that they're going to have an amazing senior year.